Welcome and thank you all for tuning into the Miller Money Sense podcast, where we discuss ways to become financially independent. If this is your first time joining us, please hit the like button and subscribe for future content. And with that being said, we're going to jump into today's topic, which is Investing 101 preparation tips for 2021. Before we jump in, let me just emphasize or say that I'm very excited for 2021, and I'm looking forward to providing more content to everyone around financial empowerment, personal finance, being able to manage and pay your bills on time, pay off debts, and also invest money, for your future, right? And along with that, obviously being able to save and prepare for major purchases that come around throughout your life. So today we're going to just pretty much share some preparation tips that you also should consider prior to investing. And one of the reasons why this is important to me is because there has been a lot of, obviously with us going into the new year, there's a lot of people with interest in learning how to invest, right? People are wanting to find ways to grow their money, because they understand, obviously, due to the COVID pandemic in 2020, they just understand that they need more money and stuff for their future. So let's jump into it. Today is going to be 10 tips. First tip is going to be have an emergency fund in place before investing any money. This is a very important tip here, because I've seen a lot of people that request and say, hey, I want to be able to invest, watch my money grow. But before you can invest, right, you need to be able to make sure that you have some funding set aside so that you can be able to take care of any minor or major, issues that come up in your life, right? So obviously, right, if you need a flat tire to be replaced, or if you need just some car maintenance or a car repair that came up, or maybe if you own a home, maybe there's some sort of appliance that's going out, or just things that come up in general throughout your life. You need to be able to make sure you have those covered or have money to cover those things before you can start talking about investing. But even before that, right, being able to cover your housing, utilities, food, and transportation costs, what I like to call the four walls, or the four main important things that you need to take care of. You need to have those in place, followed by the emergency fund, typically 3 to 6 months, depending on how, I like to say, how secure your job is, right? If you have a job where if you get laid off and it's going to take a long time to find another role in that particular field, maybe you want to have a 6-month emergency fund. But if you're in a field, right, where if you get laid off or get released from your current assignment and you're able to find something, rather quickly, maybe 3 months is enough. First step, making sure that you have an emergency fund before you even think about investing any funds into any sort of asset or investment vehicle. And that leads us into tip 2, which is never invest money into anything you don't fully understand. I recently wrote a blog post about how to select the best investments for 2021. If you all haven't read that, be sure to go to my site, millermoneysense.com. Click on the blogs link up top, and then I'll have that particular post listed there. I'll also include the website in the description box as well. One of the things that people don't understand when they're new investors or when they're looking to jump into investing is there are a lot of con artists out here that always are looking to take advantage of us, right? And these guys and gals, they're very savvy, and they're able to just find cunning ways to take your money. So I have a few things here, a few tips, or not even tips, just a few lines here that I want to discuss that you should pay attention to when you're looking at an investment and you're trying to put money towards something. One of the things I noticed, and this is pretty common even outside of investing, is if you're speaking to someone and they're speaking very fast and you're unable to keep up with what they're saying, and they're not willing to slow down. And what I mean by slow down is slow down and allow you to process what they're saying, it's probably a good chance that you need to run away from this situation. I feel like they're probably trying to pull a quick one on you. I know people are smart. I know people are, some people speak fast depending on which part of the country or world they're from. We all have different accents, of course, but if they speak really fast and they're not willing to slow down, this is a reason why they're speaking fast. So that's one thing. Another thing is if they use a lot of very large words that you don't understand and they're not willing to explain it in simpler terms, they're really trying to outsmart you. And you should never, ever, ever, ever feel intimidated by someone when they're speaking to you, especially if they're trying to sell you a service. They should be willing to slow down, be patient, and if there's some words for whatever investment is that you don't understand, they should be willing to explain that in simpler terms. These are just things I go by before I even invest anything to anyone or any business or whatever it is, or any entity. And it should just be pretty common for them to want to deep or explain in a way that you can understand, considering that they're expecting your money. Another thing too that's pretty common, you'll find where people are, if they're hell bent on you investing right now at that very moment, without even allowing you time to process what's being proposed, then most likely that investment is not for you. There's going to be some investments, right, where people reach out to you, or you may stop in at a bank or an investment firm or whatever it may be, and you really want to take that back home and process it, right? And a lot of us, if we're married or we have a partner or whatever, a spouse, you want to be able to sit down with that person and make sure you were both on the same page prior to going through with that investment. They will definitely try to convince you that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and something like this will never happen again. And I'm sure you all have heard that before. That's the typical sales tactic, if you will. But just know, right, with investing, you can walk away. And even if you can't come to that next investment, that same investment the next day, there's more opportunity out there to invest elsewhere. And then lastly, if it sounds too good to be true, well, you all know what that means, right? If it sounds too good to be true, then it's probably true. There's just going to be things, or people might say, hey, yeah, if you if you invest $10, this will turn into $100,000, within 3 to 6 days. Some just crazy, situation that you've never heard of. So yeah, just always remember there will always be opportunities to invest. We very much live in a capitalist society that obviously is not going anywhere anytime soon. So there's going to always be ways to grow your money, and there's no need to rush into anything that you don't understand. And that's fine. That's one thing we should all consider. We should never be ashamed to state or walk away from something that we don't understand. Because in most cases, if you're investing in something that you don't understand, then how would you know if your investment is going to pay off in the long run, or how would you know if it's actually working out in your favor when you check up on the investment from time to time? Always know your limits. Always just be willing to say no. And that leads us into tip 3, which is always make sure what you're investing in supports your desired lifestyle. What's the point of investing and growing your money, right, if it doesn't meet your lifestyle? We all obviously have busy lives, so we really don't need to be so tied into our investments that we can't get anything else accomplished within our personal life, right? So just to give you a little bit of background about me, I've been investing probably for the last 6 years, and I pretty much keep my investment strategies very simple in the sense that I have 3 strategies. My strategies are investments that are hands-free as much as possible, investments that require the least amount of human interaction, and then lastly, investments that I can manage while I'm in another country. For me, I don't really want to be tied down in investments all day, every day, so I want it to be as hands-free as much as possible. And then I don't want to have to rely on a lot of humans or a lot of interaction with people to make that investment work for me. And then obviously, if my wife and I, we love to travel. We plan on doing a lot of traveling soon, obviously, once we get past COVID. So we want to have it set up to where if we're in another country, we can easily manage those investments from our laptop. So yeah, it just depends on your style, right? So for us, we wouldn't do real estate because if we want to travel the world on a consistently basis, obviously with tenants, they'll need to be able to reach you at any point in time for repairs or maintenance or what have you. And if we're somewhere and it's 3 a.m. on that time zone, but it's maybe morning or daytime back in the States, we don't want anyone being able to reach out to us. And I know a lot of people say, well, you can have property management services to help you manage that while you're traveling. But for us, we haven't had the best experience for property management services. And maybe I'll save that topic for another discussion on another day. But just know at this time, for us, that's just not an option. So yeah, with that, you want to be able to make sure that your investments are tailored to your desired lifestyle. So yeah, that's why I was really going with that. Tip 4, never invest all of your money into one asset. If you notice, or if you research some of the best investors out there, they typically utilize multiple investment options out there to achieve their financial freedom. For example, I give you guys a good example. Right now, as we speak, Bitcoin is the new hot investment, right? That was been around for some time, but when I say new and hot, it's because it's all over the media, of course. You don't want all your money in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a great way to get some money pretty quickly, depending on how the market swings. But you obviously don't want 100% of your money tied into Bitcoin. That way, if it ever crashes, you want to risk all of your funds in one investment there. And the same goes for the stock market and the housing market, right? Whenever those have meltdowns, you don't want all your assets tied to that particular sector. So you just think back to back in the 2007, 2009 housing market crisis, you had a lot of investors back then completely go bankrupt simply because they had all their money tied into housing. So if you were in 2007, 2009, in that time frame, if you had housing, you also had some stocks and you had some other investments, maybe some bonds, and maybe some international things or assets happening internationally, you probably may have got hit pretty hard, but you wouldn't have lost everything. So moving on to tip 5, never be afraid to switch up your investment strategies. This is something that I've done quite a bit. And one of the things, this is more of a confidence thing, right? So a lot of times people get into investing and they think, okay, well, I'm following this approach, I'm following this strategy, I can't change it. That is totally incorrect. I give you a good example. Back in 2018, one of our goals, my wife and our goals, was to attain 15 rental properties by 2025. And obviously, I just went over our strategies with us being able to wanting to travel. That's just not an option for us at this time. It's having 15 rental properties, especially if we got those tenants needing to reach out to us. So yeah, we've completely changed our strategy even since 2018, which is 3 years ago. So never force a strategy that's not working within your lifestyle. And if it's just not working in general, be content with letting that strategy go. As we progress through life, right, our goals change. So the way we invest today may be different from the way we invest 5, 10, 15 years from now. And in my case, 2 or 3 years later. I've switched up my strategies plenty of times, and I will say that I am still on track to become a millionaire at some point. So just always remember, if you're moving in the right direction, it's okay to change the game up a little bit. And ultimately, right, slow and steady wins the race. So it's not a race to see who can become a millionaire the fastest. It's being able to reach that goal based on how you have things defined around your strategy. So yeah, if an investment's not working out, be sure to retrieve your money from that investment and move on to the next one. If you're taking a loss, just be sure to make sure that you are learning from that mistake, so that you don't do it again. And that's the thing with investing. Even the best investors, they've made mistakes before. We all make mistakes, so don't sweat it. Tip number 6, always track your returns yearly to see how your investments are performing. I've made it a habit personally to check my investments every month, but at the same time, I'm very ambitious, and I have some strong goals that I'm trying, or pretty solid goals that I'm trying to meet within the next 2 to 3 years. So I would say, at a minimum, you don't have to check it every month like I do, but at a minimum, be sure to check your investments and check in on your investments and see how they're performing at least once a year. There are going to be cases where you continue to put money into something, and then you look up one day and it's like, ooh, wow, this is really grown. And then there's going to be cases, right, where if you're not paying attention, you may be sinking or throwing money into a sinking investment that's just not really performing well. So you want to make sure that you're checking in on a regular basis to see how those investments are performing, because you don't really want to throw money down the drain. And then secondly, you may need to change up your strategy and change the game up a little bit. Tip 7, just knowing, or this is more so for new investors, investing can be hard emotionally, right? The concept of investing itself is not hard. However, the emotions that comes with it can be challenging. I know for me personally, I have an issue with patience. Being patient with investing is a challenge for me. When you think about things, right, we all want to become wealthy. We all want to become rich, but we want it as soon as possible. And a lot of us don't understand that in most investments, it takes 10 plus years on average for it to start paying off. And that's just the thing. So I know for me, when my patience start wearing thin, I start having anxiety. And then I also start getting anxious, right? And if you think about it, anxiety is not good for your health. And then being very anxious is not good for your pockets either. So I know for me personally, when I get very anxious, I start doing silly things with money. I try to rationalize in my mind certain purchases that don't make any sense at all. And I may even have done some things in the past where if I get anxious, I'll retrieve my money from an investment too soon, which is not good, because I'm missing out on those gains or growth on that investment if I would have left my money within the investment for a longer period of time. So one of the things about investing is you need to be able to control your patience, be able to control your anxiety, and make sure you're not always anxious. Be willing to go seek out professional counseling, right, or mentorship if needed, to help with these sort of things. I understand that counseling may not be everyone's cup of tea, but when you talk about investing, it's very important, because we're all trying to grow wealth or build wealth, and we're also trying to set up some form of generational wealth for our children and so forth. So yeah, just be willing to go get help if needed. It's not a bad thing. Once your investments start growing and your money starts growing and you start becoming rich, it does become mentally taxing at times. Tip number 8, never risk what you can't afford to lose. Never put yourself in a bind. If you have $200 that you want to invest, but also that $200 is going to prevent bills from being paid, or prevent, or keep food off the table, it's just not worth investing at this time. There's many and plenty of horror stories out there where people have taken all their money and put it into investments and then end up bankrupt or end up homeless or even end up back in the house with their parents. That's not something we want. And that's not the life or story we should want to be able to tell, right? And there's a lot of stories out there about this. There's a lot of it that's not, because obviously one thing you have to pay attention to once you start talking about investing is everyone likes to paint the pretty picture of these things. So for example, when you think about real estate, everyone's gotten rich off real estate. They don't hardly tell you about the people that went bankrupt due to real estate, or they have maybe 30 and 40 properties, but they're only clearing or netting a certain money each month. And by the time they have maintenance and such, maybe it's eating away from their profit. So it's a lot of things out there you have to be careful for. And it kind of goes back into the scam stuff I was talking about earlier. You're going to have people that say the stock market is the best thing. You're going to have people say real estate is the best thing. But you hardly ever see or hear about the story or hear from the people that, come out and say, well, I did X, Y, and Z and it didn't work out. You only see the good stories. Tip 9, always seek professional advice when needed. Just like with any other service, that you go out and you pay for. Investing, there are investing services out there, right? And if there's something that you want to invest in that's beyond your knowledge or you want to learn more about it, these services are here to help you. One of the things I will say about investing services is they can be costly over time. So what I recommend is hiring a professional that is willing to teach you throughout the process. And the reason I say this is because obviously if you're investing money into a certain asset or whatever it is, you want to be sure that you understand what you're investing in and understand how your money is going to perform. You also want to consider, 10, 15 years later, look at what these people made off you from the professional services. You want to consider being able to start managing your portfolio on your own. Now, I will say this, a lot of people don't have the experience and maybe they don't have the confidence to do it. But if you're willing to learn, if you're a self-starter, and if you like taking responsibility for your investments, then you can easily see yourself eventually getting rid of those costly services and managing things on your own. One of the things I will say about these services, they typically charge a certain percentage of your portfolio. So for example, if you have $100,000 portfolio that's in certain stocks, right? That particular fund manager or professional that's you're paying, they may seek anywhere from 1% to 2% of that each year. No matter how good the portfolio is performing, they'll continue to charge you for those services. And then there's going to be other services where they have a set cost, right? Maybe it's a $500 one-time fee, or maybe it's a $500 annual fee, and you get charged $500 each year based on the amount of time, or each year based on when you have your investments with that particular company. Lastly, tip 10 is making sure, and this is more so for married couple or people that are in dedicated relationships, make sure you and your spouse or partner are on the same page. I've seen many reality TV shows where, and these are mostly like business shows where, for example, maybe one guy or one husband, he'll go cash out his whole retirement account, a 401k if you will, and then he will invest it into something, some sort of business or asset, but don't tell his wife about it, right? First of all, that's not fair to your wife or your spouse. And then secondly, if things go bad, your wife, she's really not going to be happy because she really didn't have any say-so in that decision. So I will say one of the things that my wife and I do is we stay on the same page with our finances. We invest money every month. So what we do is once we pay all our bills, we take care of bare necessities, right? Like food, transportation and what have you. we have a set amount of money that we invest every month. And it ranges every month. And it just depends on what kind of income we have for that month. But where I'm going with this is before we invest any money, my wife and I are on the same page about how much we're going to invest and what we're going to invest that money into. So we found out where if we're both in agreement, we can't come back later and say, well, hey, I didn't know about this, or I told you not to do this, or whatever. So we always make sure that we both officially signed off on that particular deal ourselves. So yeah, this pretty much concludes the top 10 tips I would recommend for people that are considering getting into investing. I hope you all found these to be valuable. As always, I will say don't hesitate to reach out to me directly at my email, which is Jared, that's Jared, at MillerMoneySense.com. Should you have any questions. I do consultative services where I help people with paying down debts, getting on a budget, and creating that investment strategy from people. So yeah, if there's anything I can do to help you all with your journey towards financial freedom in 2021, please don't hesitate to reach out, as I'm more than willing to help and would love to help and watch you all grow with your finances. Again, thank you for joining this podcast, and be on the lookout for more.